Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Third POV. Izuku Midoriya was a child of misfortune, he would describe. Izuku knew of love and happiness from the age of 1 to the age of 4, but when he reached that age of 4 and arrived at the doctors, he only knew of pain and suffering from that day forth. His parents Inko Yagi and Toshinori Yagi started to forget about him. His younger sister turned on him and hated him. Izuku never understood why she did that, nor did he understand why his former best friends Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki turned on him either. Izuku kept growing up each year with his birthdays coming and going without any fanfare from his family or former friends. Not even his mother's adoptive brother Shoyuta Aizawa comes around to see Izuku anymore. Izuku receives birthday cards from him every year still, but that is it. They don't even have a return address, so Izuku can't track him down to try and get help from him either, and that has made some depressing thoughts that his uncle didn't love him either and was only sending the birthday cards for appearance sake. Izuku had nothing to disprove his theory, so that is how he thought of his uncle. The years passed, and Izuku had turned 8, and he couldn't take it anymore. He was so depressed from all of the ill treatment that he had fallen so low that Izuku had begun cutting himself, which only made things worse, even though Izuku believed it gave him a sense of control over himself and his pain. It was the only coping method Izuku knew of since his parents never listened to him and refused to get him professional help the one time that he had asked to go see a therapist. Izuku remembered that day since it was only a few months ago. Izuku had walked into the living room and had asked his mother and father if he could see a therapist, and they looked at him and said he was fine and that he didn't need one and that he was over-exaggerating his issues. That was when Izuku started to hate his family. He couldn't believe that they told him that he was over-exaggerating his issues and that he was fine, and it only got worse at school when Izumi, who had overheard his request to his parents, told everyone that he wanted to see someone for his so-called issues. Everyone made fun of him and said that a therapist wouldn't fix his quirklessness. It was at that point Izuku started to cut since he wanted some form of control over his life. However, half a year passed and he could no longer take it. Izuku was done with his so-called family when he overheard a conversation between his family. They were talking about starting Izumi's training for her to inherit Toshinori's quirk. Surprise, surprise. Toshinori Yagi is actually All Might, the #1 hero. Who would have thought that the #1 hero would neglect their child? Inko Yagi was also the #6 hero, Green Tornado, as well. What most was shocking was the inheriting a quirk part. All Might told Izumi all about his quirk called One for All, and that it was a quirk he received from his master, who also received it, and so forth. He had deemed Izumi worthy of inheriting the quirk, even though she had done so many injustices and twisted things like a bully and assault her sibling for just being quirkless. Now, speaking about being quirkless, Izuku had realized what Izumi inheriting One for All meant. It meant that All Might, aka Toshinori Yagi, was quirkless by birth. It meant that he knew what Izuku was likely going through. It meant that he had neglected his child for the same thing that he had. That had broken Izuku for the final time. As such, Izuku decided to run away. He gathered all of his belongings and his notebooks, and when everyone had gone to sleep, he slipped out of his window and ran. What he didn't know, though, was that the house was being watched that night by someone, and his entire life was about to change and take a wild ride. Izuku was running down the street, and the figure was moving across the rooftops following him. Izuku just ran for roughly half an hour until he reached a beach. It was dead of the night and a bit cold, but Izuku had finally arrived at his destination. He had searched this place up before, and Izuku was planning to hide out on the beach, even though it wasn't the best place. He would use it to train and then go hunt for food during the day. However, as Izuku started to move some things around and prepare himself for the night, he heard a sound come from behind him, and he grabbed a metal pole near him and swung it with all the strength his feeble body had. However, the pole was caught, and in front of Izuku stood a tall man with white hair. Izuku felt as if he should know the man, but he couldn't remember ever meeting here. Izuku snapped out of his thoughts when the man spoke, and Izuku backed up as he dropped the pipe and was on guard and expecting to be beaten as everyone else does to him. "Young man, why are you outside at this hour? And why does it look like you are trying to sleep here?" the man asked, and Izuku looked up at him confused on why he hasn't beaten him. The man noticed Izuku's confusion and asked him about it. Why are you looking confused? Did you expect me to do something or ask something else? He asked, and Izuku nodded his head. I'm quirkless. What? Why aren't you hurting me as everyone else does? Even my parents neglect me, so why aren't you harming me since I am worthless? Izuku asked as he glanced at the man between his arms, and the man's eyes widened. What? He stated in shock, and Izuku flinched back expecting to be hit, but he soon found himself pulled into a warm hug. Izuku didn't know why he felt safe with this man. He felt as if he could trust the man more than his family, so he decided to ask the man, Mister, why do I feel safe with you? Safer than I do with my family as if I know you. Izuku asked, and the man chuckled. Well, we have met before, but you wouldn't remember me, no you wouldn't, and I am sorry for that, my son. The man said, and Izuku's eyes widened, and he pulled back trying to figure out what the man just said. You heard me right, Izuku Yagi no Izuku Midoriya. You are my son, and I am sorry I haven't been here for you. I didn't return when Inko got together with all. I mean Tashinori Yagi, since I thought she and you would be better off, but it seems I was wrong. So wrong. The man said, and Izuku asked for his name, and he told him. Son, my name is Hisashi Midoriya. Hisashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head. Izuku then asked what he was going to say before he corrected Tashinori's name, and Hisashi said it was nothing. I'm assuming you were about to say All Might? Izuku said, and Hisashi's eyes widened and confirmed. I know, and I heard them talk about their hero work with Izumi, and, his quirk, if you know what I mean, though I don't know if you do. Izuku said, and Hisashi chuckled. I do, son. I do know far more than you know. How about I explain who I truly am once we get out of the cold, since I need to explain why I wasn't around and how I know All Might. So let's get you to my hotel room. Hisashi said as he reached his hand and pulled Izuku onto his shoulders. Whoa, what are you doing? Izuku asked, confused on why he was on his father's shoulders. Hisashi raised an eyebrow. I'm giving you a piggyback ride. I'm assuming All Might has never done it for you, Ugh. I will make sure you enjoy the life that you should have, son. Hisashi said as he started to walk away from the beach after grabbing Izuku's bags. Izuku asked why he was staying in a hotel, and Hisashi told him why. I actually live in America right now. I only came back to look at Inko and you from afar. I do it once a year on your birthday, and by the way, happy early birthday, since it's tomorrow in a few hours. Hisashi said as Izuku remembered that it indeed was tomorrow, and he would be 9 now. He thanked his new, or rather old father, and they soon arrived at the hotel room. They went up to his room, and Izuku liked the view from the room. Then Izuku noticed that they were in Tokyo. Wait, when did we get into Tokyo? Izuku asked, confused since they did not walk that long, and Hisashi laughed a bit. You fell asleep for a short period, and I teleported at that moment to Tokyo. You just didn't notice since you were so tired. How about I explain my past and everything about me in the early morning, and you can decide if you want to stay with me or not, because of my past has some issues that you will need to know about. If you don't want to stay with me, I will ensure you are set up with someone else, and will have a stable life. No matter what, I will ensure you live a better life, so let's sleep for the night, okay? Hisashi asked, and Izuku nodded his head since he was sleepy. Well, there goes stranger danger, and all since I have zero proof, expect my gut telling me you're my father. Don't molest me in my sleep now. Izuku said as he finished changing clothes and slipped under the covers. Hisashi's eyes widened at his son's statement and were flabbergasted at his son's lack of danger sense. We will so talk about that statement in the morning, Hisashi grumbled as he opened his laptop and wrote some emails to his lawyers in America to get working on paperwork for Izuku. Hisashi was also glad that Inko never legally declared him dead, since that left a huge loophole for Hisashi to exploit. Inko never legally divorced Hisashi, and the marriage had happened in America due to him taking her there for it. He had ultra motives for doing that, like if he ever wanted to take Inko and just leave everything behind, which he had planned to do when All Might had attacked him that day. As such, the divorce has to happen in America, and he also has American citizenship. This also meant Izuku had American citizenship as well, but the Japanese government didn't know about Hisashi and Inko being married, since it happened shortly before Izuku's birth, and they hadn't had time to transfer the document to Japan for them to recognize it. As such, Inko could legally marry in Japan, but this meant she voided the marriage in America, and he would get full custody of Izuku in the American court system due to her adultery that she committed, and Izuku also being an American citizen with Japanese citizenship. Thank God I never got her American citizenship, or else this would be harder to do. Hisashi thought as he requested his lawyers to prepare everything to get the courts to void his marriage and grant full custody of Izuku to Hisashi. Unknown to everyone, Hisashi was actually a very successful businessman and had an empire back in America. It was called the Midoriya Enterprises and was the #1 business. Everyone wanted a piece of the company, and many have tried to marry him, but he never remarried since he didn't want to. Everything was actually willed to Izuku already, but now it would be easier for Izuku to take control of everything since he will be involved in it. Third POV. Izuku felt so comfortable. He felt so relaxed and safe. He realized he hasn't felt like that in a long time during his sleep. Then he realized and wondered how he was feeling like that when he should be in a dump right now on the beach. Wait, I was found by someone who claimed to be my father. Izuku thought as he pushed himself up quickly and looked around. Then he felt himself being pulled straight back down onto the bed. Go back to sleep since you only slept for 6 hours. You need a minimum of 8 since you are a growing boy. Hisashi grumbled as he pulled Izuku in close to him against his chest, and Izuku didn't know what to do. He's never been hugged since the age of 4. God, it feels so warm. Izuku thought as the warmth from Hisashi made him fall right back to sleep without him even trying to. Soon a few more hours passed, and Izuku woke up to a smell of food. Then his stomach grumbled, and he was embarrassed. Hisashi came out of the sweet kitchen and smirked at him. I hear you are hungry. Come enjoy the food, Hisashi said as Izuku got out of the bed and cautiously made his way to the table and looked confused. What do I do? I'm not used to eating with others. I've always had to make my own food, and I had to retreat to my room since I couldn't eat in the dining room since they would always ask why I ate so much food when I barely ate anything at all. Izuku's state and Hisashi had to control his anger at Inko. How is that the same woman I fell in love with? Dear God, brother, I am pissed with the 8th user of your quirk. Hisashi thought as he put the food on the plates on the table and picked Izuku up and put him into the seat. It's okay to sit with me and eat. Just enjoy and let me know if you want more. We need to ensure you get a proper diet and you moving forward so your body can make up the growth it has missed out on due to their neglect. Hisashi stated, and Izuku thanked him for the food and slowly ate and had a bit of territorial aspect with his food that Hisashi noticed. He's likely had to defend his food from other kids that wanted to cause him problems in school. That will need to be worked out of him with time. I need to make sure he sees a therapist, Hisashi thought. Soon they finished eating, and Hisashi cleaned the food as Izuku just sat there. Hisashi then gave Izuku a glass of water and himself some as he sat down and looked at Izuku. Okay, first, in the future, don't go with strangers that claim to be family. You are lucky that I am actually your father, but besides that, I promised you the truth of my past, Hisashi said, and Izuku just smirked with a toothy grin. Hisashi just rolled his eyes at the toothy grin. God, just like my brother with that grin. Hisashi thought. So God, you are likely going to hate me for this, but no, I don't do it anymore, Hisashi said, and Izuku just looked at him and spoke. I doubt it can be worse than you being all might and neglecting your stepson who is quirkless when you were quirkless as well, or being a mother and neglecting the son, but dotting on the second-born and forgetting the firstborn. My standards are quite low, so just shoot, Izuku said with a blank face that Hisashi had an urge to laugh. Dear God, you have had to mature quite quickly due to your situation, Hisashi muttered, and Izuku nodded his head. Hisashi decided to start the very beginning. I guess let's start with One for All, and the full story of it since I am connected to it. There once were 2 brothers during the dawn of quirks. The older and the younger brother were close. So close, but yet they turned against each other. The older brother decided to gather forces together and work against the government since they were not protecting the quirked individuals, but soon the old brother got twisted and wanted power for himself. He wanted control, and his quirk allowed control. He used his quirk for evil and gathered his forces and waged war during the dawn of quirks. This older brother's name was lost to time for most people, and he was soon called by his quirk name All for One. His quirk allowed him to take, give, and combine quirks at his will, and he used this to control people through fear. His younger brother opposed him and was thought quirkless at the time. The older brother thought that if he kept him safe in his twisted mind and forced a quirk on him, then the younger brother would join him. The younger brother was locked in a locked room for a while, but in the end, he opposed the older one with the quirk that was granted But what the older didn't know for a while was that the younger brother quirk merged with an unknown quirk inside of the younger ones. It became a whole new quirk called One for All. That is how that quirk came to be created and transferred through 8 different people, with the 8th being All Might. Hisashi said as he stopped and took a drink of water and then looked at Izuku, who was listening carefully. Now you might wonder where I come into this. Well, I am the retired villain of Japan known as All for One, and I am over 200 years old, and you were also not born quirkless, Hisashi stated, and watched Izuku's expression change from many things: shock, sadness, confusion, and anger. Did you take my quirk? Izuku asked, and Hisashi nodded. Why? Izuku asked in a tense tone as a few tears leaked out. Because I was afraid you would hurt yourself with it. It's an advanced version of mine, and it activated right after birth, which a baby having a quirk that could take, give, combine, and copy quirks that would be dangerous. I had intended to give it back, but All Might found me soon after your birth, and I got damaged and hurt in the fight. I almost died from it, and I'm still not fully recovered from it. The quirks that I stole over the 200 years are what keeps me alive. I can give you your quirk back right now if you want, Hayashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head, and Hisashi touched Izuku's head, and he felt pain, but it was less painful than all of the beatings, so he didn't scream. I'm impressed you didn't scream, Hisashi said, and Izuku said he's had worst, which made Hisashi pale a bit at that. Hisashi really wanted to hunt down the people that had hurt his son. Well, in that fight, I had also done damage to All Might. It's why he is so skinny, which I'm proud of now, wondering what I know, Hisashi said with a smirk on his face. So you're retired now from your villain affairs? Izuku asked, and Hisashi nodded his head. Indeed, I don't do anything in the underworld anymore. I do still have contacts that feed me information about important attacks or things that happen so I can keep myself up to date, but I focus mostly on the American underworld and not Japan. I'm not a wanted man in America, and I'm only wanted in Japan since that is where I did my acts. Also, All Might thinks he killed me all those years ago. I am now the business owner of Midoriya Enterprise, which is the #1 business of America, which means I'm extremely rich, which, considering I had 200 years to amass wealth, means a lot of money. Hisashi joked, and Izuku laughed a bit as well. So if I wanted to be a hero still, even with what All Might did to me, would you be cool with it? Izuku asked a bit shyly. Not in Japan, no? In America, sure, since that is where we are going. I also have connections with the American Hero Commission and government that knows my secrets of being old as hell and being all for one. As long as I don't go stealing a heck ton of quirks from normal citizens and only criminals, then they won't bug me, and I can live as I want to. They would be interested in hearing about me having a son that wanted to become a hero, Hisashi stated, and Izuku smiled greatly, though he had a problem. But I don't want to make people quirkless, Izuku said, and Hisashi rolled his eyes at his son. You seem to have forgotten your quirk is All for One advanced. You forgot yours has the ability to permanently copy a quirk without stealing it. You have to be in prolonged contact for about a minute or so from what I could tell, but you could likely train that down. Anyway, I have 200 years worth of quirks that you could copy from the first time around. After that, once you get a provisional license or during hero training, you could copy from thugs, criminals, villains, and anyone else that you run across in the hero field, Hisashi stated, and Izuku's eyes widened at that, and smacked his head. That is when Hisashi noticed something red under Izuku's sleeve, and he grabbed Izuku's arms and pulled the sleeve down and went pale at what he saw. Oh son, when did you start? Hisashi asked. Izuku looked down in shame. It's the only way I could have some control. They wouldn't let me go to a therapist. I needed control of something in my life, Izuku said as he broke down in tears, and Hisashi moved to him and pulled him into a hug and rubbed his back. It's going to be okay. Just promise me if you ever feel like you need to cut, then come to me. No matter what I am doing, I will stop it for you, and we will talk. Even if I am on the phone with someone. Nothing is more important than you. Okay, Hisashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head. I will have you set up with a therapist that knows all about my past when we arrive in America. He works for me for quite a few years and can be trusted with secrets, Hisashi said, and Izuku thanked him, and Hisashi said it was okay, and it's only the start of the love and care that Izuku would receive from now on. Soon they calmed down enough and moved back to the bedroom and sat down on the bed and just hugged each other and bonded a bit more. Dad, when are we going to leave Japan? I don't want us getting stuck here once they noticed I'm gone if they haven't already, which is doubtful in my opinion. Izuku asked as he laid pressed against his father's chest listening to his heartbeat, which made Izuku calm down so much. Hisashi thought it over and decided they would leave that afternoon. I'll cancel the last meeting I had scheduled since I was in Japan. I can do it via remote location and just tell them someone important came up that required me to return to America ahead of schedule, so they won't complain. Also, far as I can tell, they indeed haven't noticed you yet. It's Saturday right now, and I'm doubtful they will notice until Monday when the school should call to report that you didn't show up for classes. Hayashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head. After resting for a bit longer, they decided to get up and changed as Hisashi called the private plane to get ready to depart early. Izuku played around with feeling his quirk inside of himself, and he was adapting a bit to it and the feeling of it. After about 2 hours, the plane was ready, and they headed off to the airplane. You own a nice plane, Dad, Izuku said, and Hisashi chuckled, and Izuku wondered what was funny. Do remember you are my son, meaning you own all of this as well since you are the only child I've had in 200 years. I never got with anyone outside of your mother. Now I wondered what pulled me to her in the first place with how she turned out. She and you are the reason I decided to retire, but now I wonder if it was just fate wanting you to be born and fall into my care instead of me and her really being together. Hisashi stated, and Izuku just stayed silent and was a bit sad that his dad has been alone for so long. Izuku hugged his dad and said, Don't worry. I am going to be here now for you. You won't be alone anymore. Izuku said with a smile as he hugged his father, and Hisashi smiled with a tear down his eye. Oh, you remind me so much of your uncle. You two act so much alike. I can't wait to see what type of man you grow up to be, Hisashi said as he rubbed Izuku's head and buckled Izuku in for the takeoff and sat across from him. Soon they were in the air within 30 minutes and would be in America in about 14 hours or so. After about 3 hours into the flight, Izuku saw Hisashi pull out a laptop and start his meeting. Hello, Mr. Yaoyorozu. Apologies for canceling the in-person meeting. Something came up that requires me to leave Japan early as I'm already back on the flight to America, Hisashi said, and Izuku recognized the other person's name. It belonged to one of the wealthiest families in Japan, but they had nothing on his father's wealth or power. No issues, Midoriya. It's quite all right. Though I hope everything goes well for you, the man said, and Hisashi nodded his head, and they started to talk about the business deal for the next hour or so. Soon Izuku's stomach rumbled, and Hisashi heard it. Sorry, Mr. Yaoyorozu, 1 second, Hisashi said as he stood up and grabbed some food from the small kitchen area and made a sandwich and some fruit, and then gave it to Izuku. Son, here is some food. Eat up. We will get your health checked by the doctors when we return to America, so we can make sure you are getting everything your malnourished body needs, Hisashi said, forgetting the business video chat was still going, and then he heard Mr. Yaoyorozu asked him what he just said about a son. Hisashi, did I just hear that you have a son? Mr. Yaoyorozu asked, since he was an old friend of Hisashi, though he had no knowledge of all the past things he did. Yes, you did. Doubt you would pretend you didn't hear that though, would you? Hisashi asked with a roll of his eyes at Mr. Yaoyorozu on the other side of the screen. No, I won't. When have you had a son? Mr. Yaoyorozu asked. I've had a son for 9 years now. I was separate from my family for years since I had that accident, and when I returned, I found my soon-to-be ex-wife with another man and just stayed away. I just found out last night that my horrible soon-to-be ex-wife and her new husband in Japan at least have neglected my child. He's God Seth Momo's father name that I am making up. They neglected him, and their child that is almost a year younger would assault him since he was assumed quirkless, which is nonsense. Everyone, God, I don't want to talk about it, Hisashi said with anger in his tone that Seth Yaoyorozu picked up. I understand. If we ever get the chance, we should introduce our children as they might become friends, since being from well-off families makes it hard to find trustworthy friends that aren't after your money, Mr. Yaoyorozu stated, and Hisashi said he would consider it for the future since he would be making sure Izuku is healed before trying to introduce him to people. Soon, Izuku fell asleep and just slept through most of the flight. Third POV. Izuku was currently in a nightmare, or what he would describe as hell. He was living through his memories of his life up to that point, and of course, it was literal hell on earth for him due to all of the physical and verbal violence that Izumi Yagi, Shoto Todoroki, and Katsuki Bakugo had shown him over the years. This nightmare also included all the bullying he received from the other students as well, and the fact that the teachers did nothing when they saw it. Soon, though, he broke out of his nightmare with a happy thought of his father. Izuku woke up and looked around and realized he was having a desire to cut. He wanted to find something to cut with before the words from his father hit him from before. I promised him I would go to him, Izuku thought as he moved around the plane in search of his father and found him in the back on a video call. Izuku didn't want to interrupt him though, so he just stood there, but he made slight sounds that Hisashi with all of his quirks noticed and turned his head. Hisashi paused the video call sound from his end and asked Izuku what was wrong. You said to come to you when I wanna, Izuku stuttered and Hisashi got the idea. He quickly moved to Izuku and checked his wrists for any fresh wounds, but found none. Good. It seems his mind is forcing the promise to the front of his mind since I've shown him kindness. So he seeks me out due to it. It's a start to getting him on track to being healthy again, Hisashi thought. He then asked what caused the urges to cut, and Izuku explained he was in a nightmare of all of his memories. Hisashi nodded his head and pulled Izuku into his arms, and went and sat down in front of the laptop with Izuku in his lap. The people on the other side were surprised to see a young child with their CEO. The people on the other side of the screen were all of the board members for Hisashi businesses. They would operate the companies that he owned when he had to work on different things. Hisashi soon unpaused the sound so he could talk. Okay, where were we? He asked, and they were all silent. He raised an eyebrow before one of them asked who the young man was. Oh, this is the future CEO of Midoriya Enterprise. My son is Izuku Midoriya, Hisashi stated, and everyone was in shock and Hisashi just laughed at their reactions. One of the older members of the board spoke up and asked him when he had a son. Hisashi sighed and looked at Izuku, who had fallen asleep against his chest. He just turned 9 today, actually, or yesterday. Time zones and all. Anyway, he is my biological son I had with my wife, who I am now divorcing. She got together with another man after my injuries you all know that I received it 8 or so years ago. I come to Japan near his birthday each year to just look from afar, and I found him running away from my soon-to-be ex's house at night. Turns out what I didn't know was that he was being abused and neglected, just because he was falsely diagnosed as quirkless. He has a stepsister who physically bullied him with other people in Japan since they don't look good on quirkless people, and his mother and stepfather just completely neglected him. His mental health and physical health aren't good right now, so it will be a bit of time to get him to have self-worth and all, but I'm already seeing positive signs with him just receiving kind treatment from me. He's actually pretty smart since I've looked over some of his notes, and he defiantly takes after me in intelligence, Hisashi said as he picked up one of Izuku's notebooks about heroes and their quirks. The board members nodded their heads and asked some more questions. Sir, will he be attending school or receiving homeschooling? I'm asking since several of us have children that attend the private middle school here in the city, and our sons could likely become friends with him and show him actual kindness since he hasn't received that type of care from those of the same age as him, asked one of his senior board members, and Hisashi thought it over. I will likely homeschool for the remaining semester since it will be a start of a new school year next semester. It will also allow me to help his mental state more before introducing all of that to him, Hisashi responded, and they nodded their heads. We could also slowly introduce the kids. I'm assuming you will bring him to the office with you for a while. We could bring our children for a few hours before having them leave and slowly introduce them so he adapts to them. This way, when he does start school, he will already know people and feel more confident, stated another senior board member, and Hisashi nodded at that and approved of it. Soon they finished talking about Izuku and moved back to business. They talked about some new expansions to the business and taking over a support company that interested Hisashi. Midoriya Enterprise was more or less in any and all markets since it has been around for almost as long as Hisashi himself has been for. The really senior board members knew the truth behind Hisashi since they have been with him a long time, but the younger board members only knew bits and pieces and would be told over time everything. Soon Izuku woke up again and realized he was sleeping in Hisashi's lap and tried to get out, but Hisashi stopped him. I see you are awake. How are you feeling? Hisashi asked, and Izuku stopped and thought. I'm better? I'm still getting used to all of this, but having you around helps with the thoughts, Izuku said, and Hisashi nodded his head. He gave Izuku a banana to snack on since they were only an hour or so from landing. Soon the flight ended, and Izuku realized where they were at. They were in the United States on the East Coast. More accurately, they were at the JFK International Airport in New York, New York. Now that I think about it, I didn't ask exactly where you live, did I? I also never asked for 100% proof like a DNA test either before I accepted you as my father. While my standards have really fallen so low, Izuku stated, and Hisashi felt an urge to slap his forehead at his son's antics. I'll have a DNA test done to show you are 100% mine, and I have your birth certificate and records in my home. You do have American citizenship after all, since I'm an American citizen, which I got over 100 years ago since it was useful. Also, in regards to where I live, do you know Central Park? Hisashi said and asked. Izuku nodded his head and said he did. Well, the city of New York and the state had some financial troubles at one point long ago in the past, about 120 years ago, so I made them a deal. I covered the debts that they had in exchange for ownership of the land between the East Doctor, West Doctor, and 102nd Street crossing. This gave me a lot of land, and I still let it be used by the public, and only where the house is built is blocked off. The house is located closer to the Lasker rink and the small pond area next to that. It's a bit in the woods, so we have privacy, but it's in that area. Hisashi said, and Izuku had a rough idea of where it would be located based on his father's description. Soon they got into vehicles that had appeared for them, and were driven to the home, and Izuku could say that he really enjoyed the look of the home. It was a nice wooden log cabin type home that blended right in with all of the trees in the Northwoods area of Central Park. Back view. Front view, but not seen by anyone except anyone that gets close to the home. Living room. Kitchen. Dining room. Sauna. Izuku's bedroom. Hisashi's bedroom. Pool room. Home gym and workout space. Training room for quirks or combat. Hisashi had shown Izuku around the entire house when he received a notification on his phone. Let's head upstairs. There are a few people I want you to meet with, Hisashi said as they headed upstairs, and Hisashi had Izuku sit in the living room and wait as he went to the front door. Izuku just looked around and waited until he heard his father and some other voice come into the room. Son, I want you to meet Seth King. He's a loyal friend of mine that knows everything about my past. I've also given him a quirk that helps slow down his aging, so he is a bit older than he looks. He appears in his 50s, but he's actually about in his 70s. Hisashi said as he introduced Seth King to Izuku. Hello, young Master Izuku. I am Seth King, and I perform almost all legal matters for your father over the decades that I've worked with him, Seth stated as he shook Izuku's hand. If you ever run into legal trouble or trouble in general, and you can't get a hold of your father, then I want you to call me, and I will come to you and work on getting a hold of your father while I handle whatever issue you are in, Seth stated, and Izuku nodded his head as Hisashi gave Izuku a new phone since Izuku didn't have one. It had a handful of numbers pre-programmed into it, like Seth King's number. Anyway, Hisashi, I've brought all the documents you will need to legally break the marriage with Inko since she's done what she has done. I'm assuming she's completely forgotten that she married you in America, and since you disappeared, never thought of needing to break it, but since she married in Japan after you guys married in America, then your marriage is legally voided. We just need the court to recognize it as such. Also, I've got a kit here to take blood from both of you since the court will want DNA proof that Izuku is your son, since if they are going to void your marriage and award you full custody, then they want 100% proof of him being yours. It would also help if we had evidence of the neglect, so I would like to have a person that is associated with the quirk copy Izuku's memories. This will allow them to provide it to the court, and it will allow the court to remove any rights of Inko to seek custody of him in the future. It would also prevent the Japanese courts from doing anything as well, since it would put them in a tricky situation to try and grant rights to a neglectful parent even if she is a hero, stated Seth King. Izuku asked what about the secrets of his father since he now knew them, and Seth said that Izuku could willing block memories, and that the quirk that would be used required him to consent to see any memories, so he would willing to bring the memories to the forethought, and they would be copied. Izuku agreed to undergo this, since it would also help his father and the therapist get a better understanding of what he went through, so they could help him. They talked a bit more, and Izuku's blood was taken, and so was Hisashi's, and put into sealed containers. Izuku decided to ask what Seth's birth quirk was outside of the slow-aging quirk he received from his father. My birth quirk is actually the ability to understand all aspects of a document. It's a passive quirk, so it's always on. It makes me perfect for being a lawyer, but the weakness is that it had to be a physical document, so digital documents don't work. Sadly, that's a huge drawback in this day and age, but I get around it by printing all documents off and having a physical copy for myself. It's why I handle all the legal matters for your father, since I can ensure no one is trying to hide things in contracts that he will sign. Seth stated, and Izuku loved how it worked. Oh, since you know about Dad's quirk, I'm assuming you know mine. Izuku asked, and Seth nodded his head. I'm assuming you want to copy my quirk. Seth asked, and Izuku nodded his head. Let's wait until you have more control of your quirk, and you get some that will help you handle the drawbacks of mine. It gives headaches that you have to get used to or use medicine for. So find a quirk that helps counter the effects, and I will be fine with you copying it, since it will likely be too much for you, since even I found it hard to deal with when I was your age. Seth stated, and Izuku nodded his head, while Hisashi chuckled at Izuku's desire to copy quirks already. The adults talked a bit longer before Seth got up to go handle the court documents and the DNA test. Hisashi took Izuku into the kitchen, and they worked together and made a meal since it was getting a bit late. Tomorrow we will go and have you meet the therapist that you can tell anything you want to. After that, we can go and get you new clothing and items for your room. Hisashi said, and Izuku nodded his head and couldn't wait for the next day to come, unlike the previous week when he dreaded the next day coming. Though unknown to both of them, the Yagis, Bakugos, and Todorokis were all scrambling to try and find Izuku Yagi, but they will not have the luck of doing so. Third POV. As Izuku woke up on Monday and went about his day to see the therapist and getting things for his room and personal clothing, since he was close to running out of clean clothing, the Yagis woke up on Monday not suspecting anything being wrong. Why would she, since she never paid attention to her brother any time outside of the beatings that she would give him? As such, she woke up and started about her normal schedule, without even batting an eye at not hearing her brother, who was always silent, to begin with. Though something in the back of her mind nagged at her that something was off, but she didn't pay it any attention. Soon she finished eating breakfast and left to go to the school, where she met Bakugo and Todoroki on the way. Endeavor is good in this one, and Todoroki got the scar by spilling the teapot on himself when he knocked it over at a young age, meaning Ray never went to the mental ward. They walked towards the school together, and Bakugo asked where the Deku was at so he could scare him, and Izumi said he was likely at school already, since he was known to go early or arrive just before the bell to try and avoid them. Soon though, they arrived at the classroom and sat down. They noticed Izuku wasn't in his seat, and that he likely was going to come right before the bell. However, he never arrived. Izuku Yagi never came at the bell or even after it, and the teacher did the roll call and call for him, which he didn't answer. The teacher asked Izumi if he was sick or something, and she shrugged and said she didn't know. The teacher said that she would just ignore it for that day. This was typical because the teachers honestly didn't care at all. Why would they, when they have let Izumi and everyone else hurt him for years and never stopped it? As such, the teacher moved forward and started the lessons, and the feeling that Izumi had inside of her that ate at her grew more and more as the day passed. All three of them were sitting together at lunch, and Izumi asked why they even started to bully Izuku in the first place. Todoroki spoke up and said it was because she didn't want him to get hurt, since he refused to give up his dreams of being a quirkless hero. I think we should stop. We've gone too far. We were no better than villains attacking a civilian, because we've even used our quirks to harm him as well. Izumi said, and both of the boys flinched at that statement. They thought it over and agreed that they should stop, since they didn't want to ruin their chances of being heroes. They all agreed to treat Izuku better and stop calling him Deku, but what they didn't know was that it was too late. Their actions have consequences, and even as 8 and 9 years old, their actions have caused damage that they can't be taken back. After school was over, they all headed to the Yagi house and entered the home to find parents of all 3 children there. They were having an early dinner since Tashinori had invited them over, since it had been a while since the last time all 3 families had gotten together. MOM, have you seen Izuku? He didn't show up to school today, Izumi said as they entered the living room. This caused concern across everyone's face as Inko decided to check Izuku's room. I'm wondering if he is just sick and stayed in his room without us noticing when we went out today for work, Inko said as she went to Izuku's room to find him not in the room. However, she did find a note. She started to read the note before she fell to her knees and into tears. Her falling down to her knees caused everyone to get worried, and they came rushing in prepared to face a situation. However, all they found was Inko holding a paper and crying. Toshinori tried to ask what was wrong as Endeavor took the paper out of her hand and read it. His eyes soon widened in shock, and he turned around and grabbed his son's arm. "What did you three do? Also, what the hell did you two do? This letter says these three idiots assaulted and bullied Izuku for years at the school, and that you two neglected him? Explain right now." Endeavor yelled as he looked at All Might while holding his son's arm. Shoto was scared shitless and realized their actions were about to be found out. This caused the other parents to read the letter, and they were in shock, as well as Shinro soon took the letter and read it. He was in shock and tried to remember doing anything with Izuku, but he couldn't. What would have we done? Toshinori thought as he sat on the bed. He then looked around the room and noticed something in the trash can. He reached over, and it was bandaged with blood. He paled at that and saw razor blades with dried blood on them. Ray saw them and gasped. "Oh my god, he's cutting you all drove him that far," Ray stated as tears went down her face. The kids were confused until they saw the blades and realized the implications of them. They pushed Izuku Yagi to start harming himself on top of all the HRM they would cause him on a daily basis. Ray and Mitsuki started looking around the room and noticed clothing was gone. The letter only detailed what had happened to him and that he was done with the treatment. It didn't even talk about their heroes' identities or knowing about One for All, so they didn't know that he knew about it. The parents knew about their jobs and the quirk, while the kids only knew about their jobs, with only Izumi knowing the truth of the quirk out of the kids. Though Izuku did learn of it, which they didn't know about. Ray and Mitsuki brought attention that Izuku had clothing missing, and that gave them a hint that he ran away. As such, All Might made some phone calls. Several calls went out to Principal Nizu of UA, Gran Torino, Sir Nightai, the detective, Recovery Girl, and Eraserhead, who was Inko's adoptive brother. After a few hours, they all arrived at the Yagi house to get a handle on whatever situation All Might had called about. "So let's get this straight. You, Toshinori and Inko, neglected your son Izuku for years, all because he was quirkless? Then we also have the three idiotic children who believed it was best to stop Izuku's dreams of being a hero by physically and verbally bullying him for years as well. We also have the fact that he is most likely suicidal due to all of this, but we can confirm the fact that he physically harms himself, and last, but not least, we have the fact that he has run away, and you don't know when." Sir Nightai stated out loud, and the Yagis and the three kids nodded their heads. Everyone groaned at the mess of a situation that they have found themselves in, though Aizawa was downright pissed. He decided to speak up though. "Inko and Toshinori," he said, and they looked at him with everyone else looking at him. "I'm telling you this right now. Once we find Izuku, I'm removing him from your custody, and he will be living with me moving forward. Since you want to only dot on your daughter, that's fine, because I will take care of him," Aizawa said with a glare, and the two of them flinched back, but tried to argue that he is their child. "I don't care. Moving forward, Inko, you are no longer family. Izuku needs more than what you two can provide for him," Aizawa said as he got up and started to leave. "I'm going to go out and search for him. Nizu, send me any useful information from them that might help me," Aizawa said, and Nizu said he would. Soon Aizawa was gone, and they were all quiet. Nizu then looked at the kids, and then at the parents before thinking. "You kids are lucky none of what you did is on your record. If it was, you wouldn't walk in UA doors at all," Nizu stated, and they stiffened up. Endeavor scoffed. "Shoto, consider the recommendation. I was going to do no more. If you want in any hero school, do it under your own power and pass the general exams," Endeavor said, and Todoroki nodded his head. The Bakugos were hesitant to even allow Katsuki to even go to hero school, but decided to allow it, but only after he goes through therapy. Nizu latched onto that idea and suggested that all three children should go to a therapist and anger management to ensure they fix themselves before UA. "Let's be clear, I can't really stop you from applying since this won't end up on your records, and most of what you did is protected until you were 7. So you are lucky. But I can and I will make your time at UA a bit less enjoyable. Regardless of the outside of UA, you three will be required to see Hound Dog at UA during your time there, and you will be on a shorter leash overall since I will be putting you in Aizawa class if you somehow pass. This way he can enjoy himself and keep you three in line," Nizu said. They all nodded their heads at the conditions placed upon them. Soon the conversation moved towards how to start a search for Izuku, and this is where the detective took the lead of the conversation. As it stands, Izuku's case likely won't receive much attention, sadly, due to society's views on quirkless people. If you were to reveal that you're his father, then more people would search for him, but then there is also the danger of people holding him hostage if a villain finds him first. Either way has a disadvantage to it. The detective stated, and the Yagi family gripped their hands when Endeavor spoke up. We could paint it as him missing, but that he is also a witness in a case. Which is kind of true, since I'm sure you are going to dig into the school for the stuff they allowed, and he would indeed be a witness for it. This way he can put more focus on finding him, and we can do it via my office instead of All Might's office. Endeavor suggested, and Nizu agreed with that route. As such, Izuku would be painted as a missing child that is also involved in an important case that needs to be found. The detective nodded his head and made notes to set the case up like that with the Endeavor's agency, so no one could question it in the future. All Might asked Sir Nightai if he would use his quirk to see if they would find Izuku, and Sir Nightai declined since it would only cement it. Though without All Might knowing, Sir Nightai did indeed use his quirk when he was going to leave and had placed his hand on Inko's shoulder. Soon the heroes and the detective left. Rei took her son home, and the Bakugos left as well, which left the heroes and the detective standing in the street as they got in the detective's car to drive off. As they were driving, Nizu asked Sir Nightai if he did indeed use his quirk. "I see you caught me," Sir Nightai stated. Nizu asked if they would find Izuku, and Sir Nightai thought about it. "Unknown for sure. I couldn't see the details as my perspective I was given was not great. I could tell it was in your office at UA, and some years had passed." Inko called Izuku's name in a sad tone, and there was another voice. "It's been a while since I've heard Izuku's voice, so I can't tell you if it was his or not, and if it's years in the future, then his voice would undergo some changes as well. I can tell that there was anger in the male's voice, though. There was deep anger, which would be understandable if it was Izuku. He likely hates them and wants nothing to do with them if we did find him," Sir Nightai said, and everyone in the car just nodded their heads. They were silent for a bit longer before Nizu spoke up. "All we can do is keep searching. I've never believed your quirk is 100% true. I've always believed it provides for the highest probability future, but could still be changed depending on many people's actions. We just need to keep searching and be ready for whenever we find him, and make sure we provide him the love that the Yagis failed to do so. If he was at UA, it could mean that he attends UA as a general student or something, or somehow make it into the hero course. I will work on removing the quirkless rule since I've had plans to do it anyway, and this will just provide another route for him to be there," Nizu stated, and everyone nodded their heads. Soon their drive came to an end, and Endeavor got out at his agency with the detective as Nizu, Recovery Girl, and Sir Nightai took a cab from the agency to their own destinations. This began the search for one Izuku Yagi, though they wouldn't find him until he wanted to be found. So, this was the end of part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.